What's going on, creators? Yeah, just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Today I'd like to talk about mental diets and hopefully add something positive to your mental diet for today. One of which has to do with looking at what's going on maybe through a screen or like the problems of the world, and really asking yourself, is this going on in my day-to-day life, or is this going on through a screen? You really start to disengage from the reality that maybe the news networks, politicians, media, and this is a form of media, so not to put a big broad blanket on like all media is evil, but everything can kind of be looked at as neutral as long as it's not affecting your paradigm of reality, especially if it's an illusion. Because a lot of times you see what's going on in like a big city, or whoa, what's going on in the world over here, what's going on over there, and it can make you start to tell yourself stories about the environment in which you live. A lot of times those stories are not accurate, and really when you put down a lot of these stories, these labels, you can start to create a different story for yourself and start to enjoy your day more, enjoy your life, enjoy your city, your town, your community. Everybody's living in different spaces, but like I think everybody, a common ground, wants to at least live in peace. People don't want to be fucked with. I think that it could be a pretty good common ground where either person, that's on either side of the aisle can agree on. A lot of times, this identity that we build around what's coming through a screen has to do with like a national identity, which is an illusion, or even a political identity, which is also an illusion. But like it's something that we start to believe is who we are, and as a result, it starts to influence how we're interacting with others, how we're starting to understand quote unquote issues, is based on our identities on some level, and really shaking out of the created narratives and allowing yourself to start to define these narratives a little bit more so each day, actually, because it takes a while to shed a lot of these stories and these narratives, and to even just catch that you're doing that. It's like one of the easier ways actually is if someone maybe calls you out on it. I know that's like kind of painful, like, oh, what the fuck, I don't want somebody calling me out. It's like, what is that supposed to even mean? Talking shit. But it's one of those things that if somebody calls you a name like a dumb American, for example, and then it's like, well, I'm triggered by that. How dare you, French bastard, or whatever. It's like, hopefully nobody, did it offend you though? I mean, but it's like, if that something like that did, well, now all of a sudden you can use that as like kind of like data to be like, well, wait a minute, why did that bother me? It's like, because I'm putting my country as part of like my identity. When, ultimately we're all citizens of heaven, is a way to look at that, like maybe less triggering, as part of our self-concept, which is very, very important, because so much of our self-concept is what gets mirrored in our perception of reality, when it comes to our conversations with people, places, circumstances, events, everything in our life that we steward, that we take care of on some level, that we kind of define ourselves with, has to do with our self-concept on a lot of different levels. And, moving into the new creation that we are, our new self-concept should be, and I'm not telling you what to do, but biblically, if you're following kind of biblical guidance, you could look at that as trying to understand like the new you, the born again you, the identity that you are now in quote unquote Christ, as the Bible would describe. What does that mean? Part of that is like you're finding out through experience in your actual life what these things mean as you redefine a lot of these labels and these stories and a lot of this baggage and programming and cultural conditioning, with the Holy Spirit, and asking, you got these stories that are going on that you're kind of identifying yourself with. And then, if you're maybe, getting triggered by something, going, hey God, what is a better way to look at that? Or what is a new way to look at that? And then don't be surprised if you get a little inspiration, a little nugget of, revelation or something. It's like, oh, that just came to me. I get it now. Something is a little bit more clear, and you can do that all the time. It's like it's an ever-present thing that we're either telling ourselves stories that spin us in fear directions, or we're kind of getting new understanding that's kind of spinning us in a love direction, a heaven direction. And like when it comes to some of like the manifesting crowd, and like all that kind of stuff, and even these inner conversations, a lot of times you can look at that as like the art of prayer is like a way to describe that. But Jesus kind of laid out how we're supposed to, or what we're supposed to pray for, and like trying to obey God's will. That's another big aspect of this is kind of learning what what God's will is. What does that even mean? It's like a lot of times our old thinking thought there were so many different types of wills going on. There's like my personal little ego will, like the identity I've created as like a separate being in a body, like a brain in a body, that's separate from God and people and everything else. And there's just little old me, and I just am trying to survive and all this other kind of stuff. So there's like that will. But even with that, then it's like, well, I have like the brain will, but then my body seems to have a separate will out from what my brain wants, because like my brain is like, I don't want to be feeling sickness or pain or in like illness of any type, but yet here we have these diseases that in the body doesn't. Why did it stop? I wanted to be 6 foot tall. Why why did I stop growing? It's like it has a separate will from my own, and so there's like that will, then there's like the will of others, and there's like all these separate things. And I think that's part of like kind of unraveling all these separate wills, and looking at like the idea that your own personal will can somehow supersede God's will. And like trying to get to the bottom of what is the truth, what is true about this, and so, looking towards like Jesus, is like it's already been done, it's like everything's already happened, it's already been said, it's already been wrote down, it's just like a process of like understanding it and realizing it now. It's like you've already been blessed. It's already been given to you. The only reason you don't experience it is because you just don't believe it. You push that away. It's like, well, it's like here's an easy one that can start to like spin people out. It's like when it comes to like money, because that's a gigantic trigger for people. And where's that threshold where it's just like, well, this amount is good, but once you cross this line, then you're greedy and then you're an abomination. And that's like everybody's like, is that $1,000,000? Is it $1 billion? Is it 100 million? Is it 50 grand? Is it 10? Is it barely scraping by? It's like, where's this line? And so much of that is like our own beliefs and assumptions, and a lot of it has to do with the way we are brought up. Carrying on our parents' kind of beliefs, and if your parents, had maybe money, abundance, prosperity beliefs that are serving, it might just be, commonplace, is natural and normal for you. But if you're raised with a lot of scarcity beliefs, even scarcity culture, is another way to kind of run these scripts, and realizing all that was they're just things. It's just, a lot of it's neutral. It's so much. It's like between you and God, what it is. It's like, where's that threshold? Well, it depends. Do you believe God's your provider, or do you believe some separate force is your provider? And it has to go back again to, well, do you believe there's multiple wills, or is there just only God's will that's playing out that supersedes everything else? And looking at Jesus as like kind of already answering that, especially if you start to realize your thoughts and what you believe and your assumptions and everything is starting to become mirrored into your life situations and your circumstances. It's like, okay, well, that maybe there's a time where it's like I can't have a negative thought because I don't want to manifest that, and it's like then it puts you in, and it starts spiraling into these different cycles, and so this might help keep you more grounded. And let me just pull this up real quick. And this is like the Lord's Prayer, and so when you don't really know what to ask for and what to desire, this is kind of what got me into kind of like manifesting like a heaven on earth scenario. I don't know if this is from a Catholic website. I don't know if this is from the Bible. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Okay. And so this has to do, a lot of times, you'll hear this in like maybe like a church environment, it's like not my will, but thine, like your will, as far as like speaking about like God's will be done, not my separate ego will be done, and a lot of times, it's like, well, in my, there's a lot of confusion with that, as far as I feel like a lot of confusion, because it's like, why do I always assume my will is completely different and opposite and contrary to what God's will is, for one. But then a lot of times then when you bring it back to, it's like, well, what is God's will? What would be ideal? If anything can be manifested, and there's no limit, and you can be, do, or have anything, what did Jesus say here on what to pray for? And so this is one of the things Jesus prayed for. And if you realize that Jesus, all of his prayers came true. It's like, that's one of the things to think about. It's like, so if you have nothing else to kind of ask for, maybe you feel stuck, kind of embody this. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. And so I feel like that's a really good thing to keep in mind, especially when there's so many of these triggering stories that we tell ourselves, is like, of what is our purpose? What are we supposed to be doing? It's like, well, you could be, bringing hell on earth, which you'd be like spreading and embodying states of fear and separation to others. Or, you can start to kind of embody and be like a connected, because you already are these things. But that's the part of it. It's like you are already connected. God's will is already playing out perfectly. It's a process of just realizing it. It's almost like, one way to look at it is like the sun is always shining, but then you can create illusions, and believe things that are untrue, or just unserving things, from like the old identity where you basically shut the curtain, you block the sunlight from coming through the window. But then, letting go of those stories and illusions is like just opening the curtain back up, and it's like, oh, the sun's still shining. It didn't go anywhere. It's kind of the same thing where it's just like, oh, well, it's only ever now. So it's like I can be spinning out in fear and anxiety and anger and all these states that kind of come from believing in separation. It's like part of anger is like you believe you're separate from the thing that's making you angry, and then you start to spin out more and more so, and then it gets worse and worse. It's like catching that always in the present moment, and going, oh, wait a minute, the sun's still shining, God's still there, and I can see this through a lens of peace instead. I can choose that, and as I start to choose that, more and more of my life situations will start to mirror that peace, because it's like part of your identity is peace, and so it's like, looking at these things that are triggering or annoying or frustrating and difficult, kind of looking at them through a different lens of like, is this part of my identity? Did I make an identity of that? Did I say I am clumsy, and now I'm just, constantly just tripping over my own 2 feet, because I start to believe this story. So many things that we believe are stories that are just verifiably untrue, and you can believe the exact opposite, especially, when you're telling yourself a lie. It's like, oh, you are like really stupid and blah blah blah, and it's like, what does smart mean? What do you mean by smart? Like you be on Jeopardy and you answer a bunch of like pop culture trivia that makes you smart. It's like you just memorize the script of a lot of just historical things that borderline are not even real. Probably, verifiably untrue. At what point do you become smart? It's just like, oh, because you can regurgitate scripts, that you have a whole bunch of them on theories that are verifiably untrue today. Does that make you smart? So it's like, you gotta re-look at why you're telling yourself these different. Oh, because I failed a test. That made me stupid. You know, keeping a lot of these things up in the forefront of our, and you don't got to go far to start to uncover these things, because it's like, what's preventing you from like maximizing, like, how would you feel if like heaven was on earth, and realizing God's will is already playing out perfectly on earth as it is in heaven. You're supposed to ask, believe, receive, and so, taking the Lord's Prayer, and believing that that has come true, is, how would you feel if that was the case right now? You don't have to worry about these problems, looking at another promise of God that, is like the new heaven and the new earth. Every tear would be wiped away and there'd be no more suffering or pain anymore. It's like, how would you feel, because you're already connected with God? So it's like, why do you believe that you have to go and die physically to be one with God when you can do that now? So it's like, you can do that now, but all the promises that God said after you die, it's these stories and stuff. It's like, why would that not be the case now if Jesus lives inside of me now? And so what? It's just, I feel like it's just like a process of unraveling all these stories and these narratives in our own being of limitations and of false beliefs and assumptions, and limiting beliefs and assumptions. But I'm testing that for myself, and so I'm encouraging others to test that for themselves, not just to sit and listen to some, oh, there's an expert, go listen to this expert. It's like, the expert's within you, and so like the more you start to listen to that, the better off you'll be, because it's like, there's people like right now that are living entirely it's like, right this moment, probably, someone's being born, someone's dying. Just like, everything is going on right now, and it's just like, there's so many ways you can you can construct these narratives. Of like, if you were going to be in like the media, like, this is a form of media, so it's like, okay, well, let's construct narratives then. It's like, oh, let's go outside. It's like, oh, it's the same physical environment that's been going on for the past 10 years. The only thing different is the stories people are telling themselves. So it's like, oh, some people are telling themselves stories of pandemic world. Some people are telling themselves stories of like authoritarian government world. Some people are telling themselves stories of I hear my dog just rattling around on that. Emma. Hey. Emma. Yeah, it might be time to give her some lunch. Oh, I got, like, check these out. I got, like, tons of these from, like, my old neighbor. I don't know. I got boxes and boxes of them. Like, I don't know where she got it from. She works in a warehouse, so I'm assuming from there. But, like, but, back to, like, you go outside, and does nature care what's going on through a screen? It's like, I feel like a lot of people in the truth community are just obsessed with TV, because, and that kind of is like something telling myself then too, because I watch a lot of stuff through like screens too, not to say I'm exempt from that. I do actively try to unplug more and more so, from these different devices and things. I end up watching a lot of like Star Trek and shit that was like nostalgic that I like. But when it comes to like new media, new films and stuff, like very rarely anymore it seems like I'm excited about a new movie that came out. It's just, unless it's maybe like a sequel or prequel from something I've seen before. I tell my wife, it's like, I like watching trailers for that reason. I like to find out, new things that are coming out, but like, so much of it's just regurgitated stories anyway, and it's like, what are you gonna do? But like, I think a big part of it is, being the change involves, making new media that is, inspiring and filled with truth, and like feeds people's souls on some level when it comes to their media consumption, because your mental diet is, I feel like, even more important than your physical diet. But I've been testing different things with my own body, when it comes to like diets and exercising and stuff, and it's like, because I notice a lot of like people talk shit about like the different like foods, and it's just like, Well, I think part of the problem might just be like these stories you tell yourself about, this is good and this is bad and this is this and this is that. And it's like, I remember, it's just like, oh, cholesterol is terrible for you. Now it's good for you. Oh, this is bad cholesterol. This is great cholesterol. Oh, eggs are great for you. Eggs are terrible for you. Experts say, that, you should never eat eggs. Now, experts disagree and say eggs are the best thing you could ever eat. You should eat a dozen of them a week. And then they say, oh, you should, eat yolks and no whites, and then whites and no yolks. It's like, I don't think people understand that shit at all, and I think, but I'm putting it to the test just to see in my own self if like I gain weight or lose weight based on the stories I tell myself about like the food I'm eating, because like I kind of like grew up like counting calories, because I thought that was like how you kept track of like don't eat more than 2,000 calories a day, and if you do, then you'll get fat. And it's like, I don't know if that's even real, but it's like I believed it, and so it's like, I just been eating like I went through like a phase, and like I kind of fall back to it where I only eat like once a day, like a snake. It's like don't eat anything, and then like at dinner just eat, like, gorge myself, and then just get really full, and then doing things like that. But then on the other end, I was like kind of testing these different theories and stuff just in my own self. I'm going to encourage you guys to do it. It's like, ultimately, go within yourself and do what's best for you. But this is what I'm doing, and so I was like trying to just see if like these stories had any bearing on actual physically gaining weight. And so I was like eating a whole bunch of shit for like lunch and like Sundays and stuff, see if it would, and like catching like the stories I was telling myself, like, oh, this is really fattening, I'm gonna get this, and it's like, why am I telling myself that? And it's something I was just doing just to experiment and test things, because I want to take things like to as far as they can go, it's just because it's kind of how I'm geared, so it's like, oh, I found out that you face fear enough times, you realize it's an illusion, and then what you actually want is on the other side of it anyway. And just seeing that repeating pattern over and over again through like my business, just even jumping into that, sometimes I don't appreciate how intense that can be for other people, mainly because like I started doing that at like, I don't know, middle 20s, it's like had a vision like as a teenager, worked and kind of had that like job vibe for most of my early 20s, but I think I was like 25 or so when I kind of just stopped having that and going for music, and the rest is history type thing, but so I somewhat kind of don't appreciate the intensity that is for other people, and I had stepkids at that point, and I had a bunch of responsibilities and shit, and I just went for it anyway, but like so I kind of see where people were kind of afraid of doing that, but then on the other hand, it's like, so obvious to me, but this is probably like a strength I have, I guess, we're knowing that God provides, and that's a real thing. But whereas like that promise of God is like strong, I strongly believe that I have others where it's like I'm still like sketchy about, and still like, what do you call it, just on the fence type thing. But working to push through those then too, and that was like kind of like the idea of like the stories I was like telling myself as far as like diet goes, and like still borderline on how that went, because like there was like weight gain, but then also I was like kind of preparing for winter, too, and I kind of gain weight in the winter and then like lose it in the spring, kind of like a bear. But like I think I'm gonna kind of wrap this thing up. I gotta go back to this job. I got this checklist job I've been doing. My guy, he's working at a different job. My wife, she's working, and so it's just me kind of getting on here, just give a little update, type thing, and like hopefully that helps somebody in their mental diet for today in whatever way. It's hard to tell how you influence other people, and you just never know. Some people can be highly triggered, and other people are like, oh my God, I've been waiting for something like that. It gets to a point that you can't really, worry about, how you come off to other people, just because, you having this universal appeal, I feel like is part of like that PC culture bullshit that just ultimately just starts spinning people in a really fucking weird direction, where it's just like, I see like what's going on, or at least what's being presented, not to say that that's what is actually happening, because like I said, you can construe and connect dots of like reality in totally different ways, you know, keeping in mind a lot of like the American media is not real. A lot of it's based on making money. It's like if that's your sole motivation, then it's like, well, what gets attention? A lot of times the most intense acts of like violence and aggression and the worst of human states gets exhibited for some reason, and people are drawn to that. I'm not sure why that is. Other than I just can only look within my own self of why I get drawn to things like that. Which I'm less and less drawn to things like that. So it's like hard. It's like I seen that thing with like Alec Baldwin, shooting somebody, and like I live in like a Republican area, like a red state in a very red county. Like my county just passed a thing where it's like made mask mandates and like vaccine mandates illegal. It's like that kind of a vibe. But like so I get the swings either way. And so I see like a lot of like weird reaction from people with that. It's just like, man, I feel bad for that guy. Could you imagine how fucking traumatic that had to be for just everybody involved? Hopefully everybody's like, I don't know, mentally able to bounce back from that, which I'm sure they will be able to. But yeah, what a fucking crazy situation. But like a lot of times these like, oh, did you hear what happened with this? You hear what happened with that? And it's like, man, I don't actually even know Alec Baldwin, but I do like some of the characters that he's played over the years, and as a human being, could you imagine like accidentally, I've done things that I didn't, mean to do. Who hasn't? It's like I about electrocuted myself just last week. I was like pulling this light fixture down. I forgot to turn the power off. You would think how many times, I've already been like shocked twice last year. It's like last year I got shocked twice, once by an outlet and once by a light fixture. I got stung this year like 4 times. I got stung by 3 bees and a wasp. And all of this kind of shit. So it's like I'm like well aware of like, almost fell off of a roof a couple times. I was like power washing, the second story of a house. I was on this roof and like the water was like on the ground. It's just like, and the ladder was on like this like rock, like slick rock. I didn't realize it's slick until I started putting my weight on the ladder and it started to slide out. And I fell off a ladder a couple years. And, shit happens. And that's what I don't understand sometimes when it comes to like maybe office-y type people, which I feel like a lot of the COVID hysteria was coming from a lot of like office-y types. Like because I worked in the office, and there's a totally different energy to that, and it's just like I couldn't stand that kind of like I gotta watch what I say. I might playing this PC game where it's like you can't say certain words, because it might offend somebody or whatever. It's like my last real job I was like selling receipt paper, and it's just like so much like The Office, like the TV show, and like it's like always kind of this quiet tension. It's just always about, I seen somebody at their desk like almost have like a heart attack, and it's like fall on the ground and just convulse, from this like pressure. It's like, what in the fuck is going on with this? And it's just not for me, but like yeah, there's like almost like a different atmosphere when you're using saws and like physically injuring or potentially injuring yourself, versus like the stress of like an office where it's just this weird energy and like backstabbing and like let's have another cake. Let's have another little potluck thing. I didn't realize this was against like social norms, but like I didn't know I wasn't making much money there. Well, I was, but like I would spend it on alcohol and partying. So I'd take all like my bonus checks at the end of the month, and I just get fucking crazy at the bars, just like buying strangers drinks and just all this kind of stuff. But like when it came to just the way I was like managing like actual money, just from I'd spend most of it just partying and drinking, and then I had very little for food and utilities and all this other stuff. And so it's like, time to bring in something for lunch, and like I ended up bringing like a spinach dip but I didn't have much food in my house, and so I got into it the night before, and I ate some of it, maybe like a quarter of it or something. I ate it, and when I brought it in, like people just like looked at me like, what are you doing? Why did you eat that? It's like, what difference does it make? I ate it last night. There's plenty for everybody else, you know. It just didn't compute, you know. But like, yeah, I think I'm gonna bounce. You know, I gotta get out of here. I gotta get some things done today, and yeah. Other than that, you know, I appreciate you guys liking, sharing, subscribing, commenting, all that kind of fun stuff. I appreciate your spiritual support and your financial support. You know, thank you for that. And yeah, until the next now, God bless.